All right. Well, just a heads up for a couple of you who just hopped on. I am recording this today. Don't do a major shout out to anybody or anything. And the reason is that since the evening class is not meeting today, and we'll start an Advent study the week after Thanksgiving, they would have missed the last session of the Ten Commandments. And so it was a really busy week for everybody. So rather than trying to do this on another day for them, they just said, "Hey, why don't you record the morning class and we can, you post it and then we can go back and watch it." So everybody wave to the evening class.
Hi, evening class.
So in any case, it's good to see all of you. And we are, as I said, we are wrapping up the 8 weeks that we have spent on the 10 Commandments today. And I hope that you guys have enjoyed this. It's been a real, I have really enjoyed taking this deep dive. It's something that I had never done before with the 10 Commandments. And I had just kind of always taken them at face value. And this has been a real interesting exercise for me as well. And I hope that you guys have enjoyed it too. So today we are going to, we're going to hop into the very last commandment, and we'll look at it in detail in just a minute, but it is, you shall not covet. That's the final commandment. And what I want to kind of set up is for us to start thinking about that this 10th commandment and the first commandment really kind of serve as the bookends for this set of laws, a set of guidelines, if you will, that God gives prior to any other commands, prior to any other laws that come afterward. But this is sort of these 10 are sort of the basics of living a life of faith, if you will. This is how you faithfully live out the life that God has given you. And these two, the first commandment, which is I am the Lord your God, you shall have no other gods before me, and this final commandment, you shall not covet, really kind of serve as spiritual bookends to everything in between, and which makes this final commandment very intriguing to me. And again, we're going to look at it in more detail. But before we do, I want to show you real quick just a couple of videos. And wait, before I do that, I got to make sure I'm on the right thing here. Yep. So the first, just to kind of set the table for us, and the first video is shoot. Hang on, I'm sorry. I've got all my stuff confused here. I've got too many icons that I don't know what to do with. All right, so this first clip is from Oliver Stone's movie Wall Street, and it's one that is probably very familiar to you. This is a speech that Michael Douglas's character gives at a stockholders meeting where he is trying to do basically a hostile takeover of the company, and he's been accused of being motivated solely by greed. And this is his response. Can you guys see that?
Yes.
Okay.
The point is, ladies and gentlemen, that greed, for lack of a better word, is good. Greed is right. Greed works. Greed clarifies, cuts through, and captures the essence of the evolutionary spirit. Greed in all of its forms. Greed for life, for money, for love, knowledge, has marked the upward surge of mankind, and greed, you mark my words, will not only save Teldar Paper, but that other malfunctioning corporation called the USA. Thank you very much.
So the point that he makes is that he's been accused of being motivated by greed. And essentially what he says in so many words is that it is our desire for more. It is our desire to do better, to achieve more, to climb higher, to obtain more. That it's that desire that ultimately, as he says, captures the essence of the evolutionary spirit. It's what advances us, right? That if we ever stop wanting more, if we ever stop desiring to have that what we don't, then basically we become stagnant. And then ultimately, I think he would say we die. And so, kind of hang on to that for a second. Let me see if I can do this. I'm afraid I'm not going to be able to do this. Nope. Well, shoot, I'm afraid I'm not going to be able to do this other one. Wanting me to. Well, I don't want to waste time. I'm not going to be able to do the other one. The other one was, I've actually shown it before in a sermon, I think during Lent, if I remember right. But it's a commercial for a company that does like backyard, like very, very elaborate backyard patios and pools and all of that. And the commercial just shows this couple, and they've got this, I mean, absolutely gorgeous backyard, with an outdoor kitchen and a pool and all of this. And they're cooking. And what's really funny, what I wanted to show you is that they're all dressed up and they're cooking hot dogs on this grill on this, this beautiful backyard, very elaborate backyard kitchen. And my question was always, if you've got a kitchen like that, why are you cooking hot dogs, right? Why aren't you cooking steaks or something? But as they're cooking, their neighbors just come peeping. Steaks. Yeah, exactly. Their neighbors are peeping over the fence, and they kind of get caught peeping, and eventually the other couple invites them over, and so they're all sitting around eating hot dogs in this thing. And the point of the commercial is that if you let us come and build your outdoor space, then you will be the envy of your neighbors, right? All of your neighbors will envy you, and that is lifted up as, frankly, a good thing, right? That we all want to be the envy of our neighbors, and so the commercial sort of plays into that bit of our psyche, that we like to, what we like for people to envy what we have. And that really kind of gets to the heart of what this commandment is getting at. Oops, let me go back to the top here. So we're back in Exodus 20, and we get all the way to the bottom. We've gone all the way through here. We've gone through those first 4 commandments again that speak to how we relate to God. We have that first commandment: you will have no other gods before me, and then you shall not make yourself an idol or worship it. You shall, and then you will not make wrongful use of the name of the Lord. And then finally, remember the Sabbath day and keep it holy. And then we move into that second tablet, if you will, and we go to honoring our father and mother. You shall not murder. You shall not commit adultery. You shall not steal. You shall not bear false witness against your neighbor. And if you remember, we talked about all of those from the fifth, sixth, seventh, eighth, and ninth commandment. All of those are sort of born out of selfishness, right? That it's sort of selfishness that lies at the heart of the transgressions that are being communicated there, right? That my desire, what I want, is more important than what anybody else wants. that it's, it's okay for, I justify that it's okay for me to commit adultery because what I want is more important than the damage I'm causing to my family or any of that. And the same with stealing. I want something, and it doesn't matter whether someone else is going to suffer because I take it. I want it, and so that's justification. And so we talked about that the cure for that, or whatever the flip side of that, is selflessness. And that it all comes back to that two-pronged commandment that Jesus says is the most important thing. If you want to boil everything down to this basic elements, then it's love God and love your neighbor. And that loving your neighbor truly is is sort of the cure-all, and what guides us ultimately to living a selfless life. And then finally, we reach the end, the very last commandment. And this one, interestingly, you'll notice is a little more detailed than the others have been. Right? It's not just you should not covet, which is kind of how we usually boil it down, but it's you shall not covet your neighbor's house. You shall not covet your neighbor's wife, or your neighbor's male or female slave, or ox or donkey, or anything that belongs to your neighbor. And so notice the emphasis on neighbor, right? We sort of read into those previous 5 commandments. We've read into them this idea of loving your neighbor as being sort of the cure-all for those transgressions. But here it becomes very explicit in the commandment: you shall not covet your neighbor's house. You shall not covet anything that belongs to your neighbor. And so, as with the other commandments that we've been looking at, one of the exercises that we've repeated in this study is to say, well, the commandment is written as a negative, if you will. You do not do this. And instead, we've said, well, what if we flip that and say, well, what is it that God is requiring? Not just what are we not supposed to do, which is kind of the approach that Jesus takes in the Sermon on the Mount, right? When he says, well, the commandment says this, but I say, and he turns it around. And so we ask the question then, so we're told not to covet. Well, then what is it that God is requiring? If God doesn't want us to covet, then what is it that God is saying we should do? So let me toss that out there first and see if anybody has a thought. What do you think God is saying we should do?
Be content with what you have.
Yeah.
I guess at first, my first thought was be happy for your neighbor and all they have. But I think it really maybe is a little more basic, and be content with what you have. That really hit home when my dad was in a nursing home, and he had very little, and he just said, I'm content. I'm content.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, I think that's absolutely right. And hold on to that idea of being happy for your neighbor, because I think we ultimately get there. I think that's sort of the ultimate, the final turn in this is not just that we are content. And I think you're absolutely right. Not just that we are content, but that also that the kind of the ultimate act of loving our neighbor, and the ultimate flip side to covetousness is that we are able to celebrate what our neighbor has. Rather than coveting it, we are able to actually be happy for them, to celebrate, whatever it is that they have. What else? Anything besides contentment?
it may kind of overflow into what Carla was saying, but not just be content, but maybe appreciate what you have.
Okay. Yeah, I remember a conversation that I had with my older son Andrew one time, and he was, I don't know, he was thinking about changing jobs, and he asked, he said, well, what, I feel like I should just be content with what I have, but I'm restless and this and that and the other, and I told him, I said, the ultimate place to me that you can reach in terms of saying, okay, I'm happy, is to be able to look at, I said, if I look at my current situation, I look at where I am right now, I look at my job and the church that I'm serving and whatnot, and ask the question, if nothing changes after this, right? If everything just sort of stays as it is, would I still be happy? Could I, would I be okay in saying, I'm never going to get a better job, I'm never going to go to a bigger church or whatever. And I said, and if you can honestly look at your situation and say, yeah, I'd be fine with that, then you are in a place of contentment. And that's sometimes that's a hard place to be, or a hard place to get, right? So good morning, Carol. So here's the question, and this is where as we take a deeper dive, this becomes a much more, as we've seen before, much more layered, much more complicated commandment, because we have tended as a culture to boil this down to, well, I shouldn't want what my neighbor has. Right. I should, as you said, I should just be content with what I have. And Dwight, as you said, I should be appreciative of what I have. But go back to that clip that I showed you from the movie Wall Street, and Gordon Gekko saying, greed is good. Greed has marked the upward surge of mankind and captured the evolutionary spirit throughout all of history. That this idea that if we're not wanting more, if we're not trying to do better, then essentially we quit moving forward. And if you're not moving forward, then you're stagnant. And if you're stagnant, ultimately you die. And so we tend to equate coveting with desire. And so that they're saying it's bad that we desire something more than we have. But is coveting and desire really the same thing? And more importantly, if it's not the same thing, then what differentiates the two?
I think coveting is desiring what your neighbors have, where desire is what you yourself want for yourself.
Okay. So is desire a bad thing?
I don't think so.
I think it's the incentive, as he was saying, incentive to grow. Incentive is to desire not necessarily more, but better.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes less is more.
Mm-hmm.
But covet to me it's all negative. You've got it, I want it, and I don't care about you. Desire doesn't feel that way.
So let's follow that, Carol, because I think you're definitely onto something. So would you agree that coveting is at least as much about me wanting something just because you have it as it is about me just wanting something?
I would think so. it just has such a negative, selfish, I'm not really trying to grow, I'm trying to just take.
Mm-hmm.
Versus desire is telling me like, got some positive reason or impetus to do this. And if I desire it, it's not necessarily a negative thing for somebody else. I think that's the last, it's not negative for somebody else. How's
Mm-hmm.
that?
Okay. So if we follow your reasoning there, then could we say that this final commandment, this final sin that is identified in the 10 commandments, in some ways is sort of like the sin at the heart of all the others? Because we talked about that it's selfishness, it's my own desires that are more important than yours, that lies at the heart of the other. You shall not murder, you shall not steal, you shall not commit adultery, and so on. And if I'm hearing you, then it sounds as though coveting sort of lies at the heart of all of that. It's that coveting that then sort of makes those other sins, if not possible, then justifiable. I don't want to put words in your mouth. I want to make sure I'm hearing you correctly.
I just couldn't hit the unmute button. No, I think that pretty much hit it. What went through my head was like World War II, Nazis, Germany, and it's not enough to disenfranchise these people. You've got to steal all of their art, all of their treasures, all of their homes, everything. You've got to pound them into the dirt because you covet what they have, versus having a desire to collect beautiful art or things like that.
Mm-hmm. I think that's a great example. Yeah. Again, I want something because I am offended because you have something that I don't.
Yeah, I was going to say, when we were watching that video, that his definition of greed and mine are two different things.
Okay.
His definition of greed sounds more to me like motivation, and of course that can run different directions too, depending on what's motivating you. But I agree with kind of what I think I heard Carol say, that the envy part carries the negative connotation that you not only want what they have, but you wish ill.
Mm-hmm.
or you want to steal what they have from them, rather than be motivated to maybe do something like that or get something like that
Mm-hmm.
you're envying.
Yeah. So one commentator that I read as I was preparing for this said, and I found this very intriguing, said that covetedness or coveting, covetedness is a very awkward word to me. So that coveting results from a lack of spiritual vision, which is ironic because most of the time what we covet is what we see. But he says, well, it's a lack of spiritual vision, meaning that I am unable to, first of all, I'm unable to see what I have. I'm unable to see, the blessings of my own life, because I'm too busy wanting something that someone else has. But that in the act of coveting, that it removes my ability to see what is behind or what has led up to what it is my neighbor has. And the way he trying to see if I can, where I jotted it down. He says that in coveting, we see our neighbor's destination, but we but we do not fairly estimate the length of the road leading there. And so the example that he gives is, well, I might see my neighbor's house. My neighbor has a better house than I do, right? A nicer house, a bigger house, whatever. They have a pool and this and that and the other. But in coveting, it takes away my ability to see, to imagine, to envision the journey that it takes to get there. That perhaps my neighbor may be struggling with paying for that house, or how much would I struggle to pay for that house? Seeing, I see the relationship that my neighbor has with his wife, and so and I think that's what I want, and so I begin coveting my neighbor's wife, without being able to vision the years of work that went into building the relationship that they have. And then being able to turn that vision back on myself and say, well, maybe if I invested that kind of effort in my marriage, then what would my marriage look like? How would my marriage look different? And the example that he gave is that there's the story that he told was that there was a piano concert, a concert pianist performing, and finished playing this beautiful piece, and a guy goes up to the pianist afterward and tells the pianist how much he enjoyed the show, and he said, "I would give 10 years of my life to be able to play like you." And the pianist respond, "Well, it cost me 20." Because all the guy in the audience saw was the final destination, and wasn't able to envision the road that it took the pianist to reach that destination. Didn't think of, envision all of the years, all the hours and hours and hours of practice that this pianist had endured. Maybe the sacrifice, maybe the childhood sacrifices that this guy had made, because he was inside practicing the piano all the time. So I found that interesting, this notion of coveting stemming from a lack of spiritual vision. And I'd be curious to hear how you guys react to that.
Glad you gave those examples. I didn't get it at first, but yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah, kind of another similar example maybe is one my dad gave, where my dad used to teach English at schools, elementary, junior high, high schools in Japan. And, English is not an easy language to learn if that's not your first language.
Right.
And so this one kid was finally hit it on the nose. He said, they're talking about studying English. He said, "I don't want to study English. I don't want to learn English. I want to know English." He wanted to skip the hard parts and just know it. And I can't tell you how many times I felt that way about things that I'm studying. I don't want to do the hard work. I just want to know it. I'm coveting that skill.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's a great example. A great example as well. One of the things that struck me is that in sort of wrestling with this notion of coveting, that it's coveting that really lies at the heart of what happens in the fall in Genesis, where everything gets derailed to begin with. That it's really, coveting is sort of the original sin. Because if we think about it, the picture that is drawn for us of Adam and Eve in the garden is that they were in perfect relationship with God, right? They had everything they needed. They didn't want for anything. They were in kind of perfect harmony with God. You know, God came and they walked together in the cool of the evening, and so on and so forth. And it was exactly the way God intended. Right. That's the picture that's drawn for us. That it's the perfect relationship between God, or between creator and the created. And what happens? Well, the serpent comes and begins to stoke the fires of discontent. Right. Well, I know you have all this stuff, but you don't know what God knows. Right. So really, you don't have as much as you think you do. And so begins to kind of stoke that discontent, to the point where the serpent then convinces the man and the woman that if they will just eat this fruit from the tree that God had told them not to eat from, that not only will they not die, but that they will be able to see as God sees. They will know what God knows. And so suddenly this perfect life that they have, this perfect harmony that they exist in, is not enough. And so they decide that they need more than what they have. God has something that they don't, and they want it. And that is sort of the beginning of the end, right? And so in a lot of ways, I think you can argue that coveting really is that original sin. That's where it starts. Not because they want to be disobedient, but because they want more than what they have. And suddenly what they have is not enough. That's sort of as I looked at it that way, it started to make sense why this is sort of the final wrap up of these 10 commandments. You want to boil it all down, particularly how we relate to each other. Then I think you can make a strong argument that coveting sort of is sort of the sin that is behind all the other sins that are addressed here. Adultery begins, not with the physical act, but that at some point I decide that I want something other than what I have, that what I have isn't enough, that I can't be satisfied with what I have. And so then suddenly it becomes, in my mind, I become justified in risking what I have, potentially destroying what I have, so that I can get what I think I want.
I'm not sure if you discussed it before I managed to get my computer working, but I was thinking about this, and there's a song called 110 Soldier that this sounds exactly like, because it's like there's the mountain people, there's the valley people. The valley people want what the mountain people have. The mountain people say, fine, we'll share everything, all our treasures, all our secrets, but that won't do. The valley people have got to go kill everybody, and then they get killed themselves, and they find out that the big treasure under the stone is something that says peace on earth. And then it says 110 soldier walks away. One person survived that cataclysmic misconception of what treasure was. So the mountain, maybe that spiritual treasure versus they thought they were going to and stuff, and they didn't want to share it. So, and then they find a sign. So here's your sign.
So as Bill Engvall would say. The other thing that struck me is that I can't help but think that we're seeing this idea play out in the political arena right now, or not just right now. It's been that way for a long time. And because what are we seeing right now? So in Washington, the Democrats have control right now, right? And well, yeah, on paper they have control. Let's say it that way. So they have control. Well, what do the Republicans want? The Republicans just want the control. right? They want the control back. They want to take the control away. And so their motivation in pretty much everything they do is to try to wrestle that control, whether it's good for the country or not, whether it's the right thing to do or not. They want to wrestle control. And I'm an equal opportunity offender, because when the Republicans were in charge, the Democrats did the same thing, right? Let's hold up appointments. Let's hold up ambassadors. Let's hold up this, because we don't want to give them a victory, because if they get a victory, they might maintain control, and we want it. And it's frankly, it's been that way. Gosh, I've had conversations with folks who've kind of tried to trace it back. I mean, it's been that way since the Newt Gingrich days. That the goal in Congress, especially now, in both houses, is to win control or maintain control, not to necessarily get things done. If we happen to get things done, well, that's fine, but that's not the main thing. The main goal now is simply to win, to either take back or to maintain control. And I think we're seeing, and have been seeing for years, the results of that. Right? We have gridlock, we have bickering, we have infighting, and an increasing disincentive to work together, to ever reach across the aisle, to the point where now reaching across the aisle, regardless of the circumstances, is almost a sin in and of itself. And I would bet every dollar I have in my pocket that if next year during the midterms, the Republicans, as anticipated, are able to take back control of Congress, and history would suggest that they have a very good chance of doing so, the Democrats will all of a sudden become just as obstructionist and just as disinclined to reach across the aisle and give the Republicans a victory as the Republicans are now. Because the goal, what they want, is not necessarily the work that they're doing. What they want, what they covet, is control. And I definitely agree with Carol that I say control with a kind of tongue in cheek. But I mean, does that make sense? Or am I way off base?
I think you're dead on.
I wish I was wrong.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. And it's the kind of thing that just really makes me sad in one sense, and makes me really angry and not want to ever watch the news again, which is kind of where I am anyway. Because they've forgotten their job. Mm-hmm. And even the everyday people like us who, are supporting one side or the other, have forgotten what's supposed to be happening, which is running a nation, running a nation of how many 100 million people that affects 7 billion people worldwide, mm-hmm. the future of our planet itself. And just, I can't even begin to say how many myriad of issues, just so somebody can be.
Oh, you broke up there. Just so somebody can be what?
Doesn't get a single seat. Like, no, your goal is to, your goal is to, help school children and to help the elderly and to help the environment. But yeah, I am very disenchanted by all of them and discouraged and dissatisfied, and a bunch of other diss words.
Yeah. And I stress that I'm not picking on one side or the other. I mean,
No, not at all.
if you watch CNN, then you come away thinking, okay, well, this is the Republicans are just terrible people. But I mean, it hasn't been that long ago that I can still remember very well. That when the Republicans had control of Congress, the Democrats did many of the exact same things that they're criticizing the Republicans for now. I mean,
I know. I'm very upset when they do that. I think that they should all be better than that.
Absolutely. And so it is interesting. I mean, I think in some ways, we sort of see this individual sin really writ large in that example. And you sort of see the how it unfolds. So, Carol, you about to say something?
Just watch a small thing that's happening, but is actually growing. That years ago we would have said nobody could be anything but a Republican or a Democrat, and we have people that there's a small but steady group of independents, and that are getting and holding on to House and Senate seats.
Oh, that's good.
And because I've often thought as one coast or the other is wagging the dog, but the dog's body is in the middle of the country, and they're getting really tired of this garbage that's going on, and they're looking for people. And then it finds out when there's tiebreakers, all of a sudden this handful of independents are extremely popular. They're being courted by both sides. So just if that keeps building, we might have an independent nation one of these days that actually sticks to the job.
Yeah, that would be that would be refreshing, wouldn't it? So I guess the kind of the final point here is as we've been talking about the last few weeks, in the end, it really does come back to it comes back to this idea that Jesus espouses, which is loving God and loving neighbor. If you can do that, that really is the beginning of the cure, even for this most basic sin of coveting. If I truly love my neighbor, then that will take away my ability to covet what he or she has. And not just, again, I think that Patty was absolutely right earlier when she said, desire is not a bad thing. There's no reason that I can't, look across the street at my neighbor's house and then they just spent, tens of thousands of dollars doing all kinds of upgrades and repainting the exterior. I mean, it looks great. Or that when we went across the street to our other neighbors right across here and they had redone all of their floors, right? And that's what got Melissa and I talking about redoing ours. That was a year ago. And we're about to embark on that journey. Probably right after the first of the year, they'll start work. But we went over to their house and they had redone the floors in their house and all through the house. It was the same flooring. It was gorgeous, and that's what got us looking at ours saying, boy, that would be a huge upgrade to our house. Wouldn't we love to do that? And so that got us talking about it. And so, yes, we looked at what they have and we said, boy, that's beautiful. And that sort of motivates us to want to do that ourselves. There's a difference in that and me getting to the point where I don't even speak to my neighbor across the street because I'm so bitter because she has what I want. Rather than being able to say, wow, that's what they did at their house is beautiful. I bet they saved for a long time to be able to do that, and celebrating with them that they've redone their house and they're happy with it. And then saying, how could we make that happen? And putting the things in motion that says, not only can I celebrate what I have or what I will do, but I can celebrate what he does. And in fact, say, not only I celebrate what you have, but I thank you for giving me the inspiration to do it as well.
And when I worked at the company that had so much greed and covetousness at the top, which was Enron. It cost thousands of people their jobs, their medical benefits, insurance, their life savings, their mental health, their marriage breakups. It caused something terrible by just a few people who coveted being greater, bigger than they actually were, and doing what they did illegally to a company that could have gone on and progressed. But instead, that to me was the worst picture I've ever encountered of an inside company, because I was in HR and pension, and so I saw this firsthand, and it just was terrible to witness, and the lives that were destroyed just because a few people who were making a ton of money and had a ton of power wanted more. And that to me is what covet.
I'll leave you with one thought that kind of occurred to me right before we started, as I was looking back at my notes from last week when we talked about bearing false witness, right? And if you'll remember, we talked about how social media has sort of played into that, because we are all tempted to project this image on social media of our lives that may or may not reflect reality. And in fact, very oftentimes it doesn't reflect reality. And so it kind of struck me how these commandments are interconnected, because I am much more likely to covet something that is projected to me as being perfect, right? I wish I had their life because it looks way better than mine, when in fact, it very well may not be, because what they're projecting, what I'm seeing on Facebook, what I'm seeing on Instagram or whatever, might not at all reflect the reality of their lives. That perfect family that I'm seeing on Facebook might have all kinds of cracks in the veneer that I'm not seeing. But we tend to respond to, again, we covet what we see. And if what we see looks better than what we have, then we are, the temptation is going to be there. So it's interesting to me how they all connect. So. All right. Well, again, I hope that you guys have enjoyed the dive into the 10 Commandments. I certainly have, and have appreciated all of your insights. We've had some really great discussions through these. And so once again, next week, we will not meet. If you want to meet, I'll set up a Zoom meeting, but I'm not going to be there. I'm going to be eating turkey and watching football and enjoying my granddaughters. But then we will start up the following week, and the date is escaping me, 28, 29, about the 1st or 2nd of December. That'll be the first Thursday in Advent. And so we will begin an Advent study. And it's the second. Thank you, Carol. So we'll begin an Advent study, and we'll actually, as I said last week, we'll actually get 4 weeks to do an Advent study because of the way Christmas Eve falls, and which is not always the case. So we will be ready to go with that, and I look forward to seeing you. And if especially those of you in Round Rock who I won't see before, have a wonderful Thanksgiving, and the rest of you I will look forward to seeing on Sunday.
Thank you, Lee.
Happy Thanksgiving.
Happy Thanksgiving, Peter. Take care.
Thank you.
Blessings to all of you.
All the same.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.